creative writing students in the long-running Rosamond Prize, a creative composition and performance project from student pianist Celia Denor, which has moved into digital territory as it has been realised during lockdown, some music from one of our exciting professional partners, the vocal ensemble Edward Grieg Corps, and some Arthur Sullivan from one of his most passionate and distinguished advocates, the pianist, composer, broadcaster, and a visiting international tutor at the RNCM in the School of Vocal and Operatic Studies, David Owen Norris. First, however, I'm delighted to be able to share with you my favourite brand new RNCM radio jingles which have been sent in by you over the last couple of weeks. First up is our longest jingle, sent in by current RNCM student Dean Smith. At a minute long, this is far from standard radio territory, but none the worse for it. I'm not sure if this is the jingle for the show we're making, or the show I somehow wish I was making, but I've enjoyed the mellow tones of Dean's guitar, along with the sounds of him bellowing the letters of the college, apparently on his daily run past the building.
Welcome to the diverse sounds of RNCM. Music will save the day again.
Next up is Dr. Lucy Pankhurst's jingle, which is a bit more like the length I was expecting. Lucy is a recently graduated PhD student from the RNCM, a diverse composer with a particular interest in brass. This jingle starts like a brass meets synth fanfare, but I particularly like the arpeggiated piano ending and the sudden percussive cut-off. The next jingle is from Philip Robinson, who was a student at the RNCM in the mid-90s, and I believe the current chairman of the British Association of Symphonic Bands and Wind Ensembles, founded by RNCM legend Timothy Rainish in 1981. An appropriately distinguished entry. I was particularly surprised when the choir joined us there. Another excellent submission is from Jack Hughes, a member of the RNCM's front of house team and a composer and sound designer. This one would, I think, work especially well if we had an RNCM news section. The next submission is from recent composition graduate, composer and pianist Aaron Breeze. There are two eccentric things about this submission. Firstly, it was sent in 3 versions, long, medium and short, which only have a second difference between each one. And secondly, well, I think I'll just play it and you can hear what I mean.
RNCM, Radio.
If you know Aaron as well as I do, then you can join me in thanking him for reining it in. We'll be hearing more from Aaron and his involvement in the Rosamond Prize later on. Finally, our last submission is tastefully restrained, pitch perfect, and production slick. What else might we expect from RNCM trombone tutor and professional voiceover artist Carol Jarvis?
RNCM.
We'll be announcing the winner of our competition, chosen by our distinguished BBC Radio 3 judges Elizabeth Alker and Tom McKinney, on a future show. In the meantime, please keep sending us your jingles and we'll share as many of them as we can. We're shortly going to hear from David Owen Norris about his Sullivan Songs project, but first here is a performance of one of Arthur Sullivan's earliest pieces. It seems likely that he wrote more works for cello than have survived, probably for his brother Frederick. Alongside his only concerto, this duo concertante for piano and cello is the most substantial example we have. It's a single movement work, although clearly expressed in 2 sections, and is performed here by David with the cellist Joseph Spooner at the Warburg Institute in London in May 2014.
Hello, I'm David Owen Norris. I play the piano and write music, and I quite often find myself talking about it on radio and television. Some of the high spots of my teaching life are when I come up to the RNCM 4 days a term to work with the singers. I'm very pleased that 22 college students have taken part in my Sullivan Songs project. With the encouragement of the Sir Arthur Sullivan Society, I'm recording all his songs and ballads. We started with a double CD on Shadows with Mary Bevan, Ben Jonson and Ashley Riches. We'll be making a third CD later this year, but in between whiles I've filmed 28 of the songs in Manchester, some in college and some, thanks to Lynn Dawson's brilliant idea, in Mrs. Gaskell's drawing room, which has a very nice ancient Broadwood ground. For those films, we wore period dress, so the songs can be seen and heard in their original setting, the elegance of a Victorian drawing room. The films aren't edited yet, thanks to the virus, but when they're ready, they'll be linked to all sorts of special interest websites and should make quite a splash. Thanks again, all of you, and to Jonathan Fisher, who put it all together. Terrific performances, every one of them. Because the songs really are worth doing. The one Sullivan song people might know is The Lost Chord. Seated one day at the organ, you might recall, the singer improvises her way to a chord of music like the sound of a great Amen, and then can never find it again. That one lost chord divine which came from the soul of the organ and entered into mine. Sullivan wrote the song actually at the deathbed of his beloved brother, and properly performed it's a wonderful piece of music. Not mere unmediated emotion, but deploying all Sullivan's brilliant technical skills to transform that raw emotion into art. The opening of the song, for instance, is a recomposition of the opening chants of Evensong, with which Sullivan, the star chorister of the Chapel Royal, was very familiar. And the way that Sullivan represents the lost chord itself is a stroke of genius. I don't know if you ever saw that Monty Python sketch about the funniest joke in the world that made everyone die laughing. It was as impossible for the joke actually to appear in the script as it would be for the lost chord actually to appear in the song. It could only be a disappointment. Sullivan, again drawing on his experience as a chorister, represents the chord by a modal progression, a mixolydian cadence, to be precise, that occurs just once in the first verse and then is lost. I've saved this song up to be the last one we record, make a bit of an occasion of it. But you can hear Caruso, no less, sing it on YouTube, complete with top B-flat and fantastic period style, if you like that sort of thing. Since he was such a singer himself as a boy, Sullivan's songs are immensely singable and the piano accompaniments are beautifully judged, perfect spacing and texture. I've always enjoyed his music. I've never had a problem with tunes. Some of my standout childhood memories are the chorus of ancestors stepping down from their portraits in Ruddigore, or Three Little Maids in the Mikado. Onward Christian Soldiers was a big favourite long before the professor of mathematics at the Open University drew my attention to its sophisticated contrapuntal structure. And later on I discovered Schubertian masterpieces like the Duo Concertante for cello and piano. In his own day, Sullivan's breadth was a cause of disapproval from the musical establishment. How could the composer of the most popular oratorio ever composed, I refer to the Golden Legend, so popular indeed that at one point the composer banned its performance, how could this composer write comic operas and never a sonata in sight? Our broader tastes today bring Sullivan closer to us, and one aspect of the RNCM's contribution to the project that I'm looking forward to is the idea that students of more popular genres should do covers of some of the songs. We'll have to choose the songs carefully. Victorian sentiment is not a million miles away from modern emotional reactions, but so many of Sullivan's songs are about, well, death. Some find this bewildering, even amusing. But just consider, Adelaide Proctor, the author of The Lost Chord and half a dozen other Sullivan songs, the most popular Victorian poet after Tennyson, wrote about what she knew. We've already seen that The Lost Chord was composed at a deathbed. Many of Proctor's other poems are about early deaths and lovers failing to arrive in time. And sadly enough, that's how Adelaide Proctor died herself, at the age of 38, having caught tuberculosis as she worked amongst the homeless. We should wrap up the Sullivan Project this autumn, and the whole world can get to know a remarkable repertoire of beautiful music.
Once I used to dream heaven was far, so far, high above the gleam of the farthest star. With my child in glee, life was only mirth. Heaven was naught to me, who had all on earth. Through the world we went, my sweet child and I, in a love content, ne'er a tear or sigh. Gave I hill and dale, ever singing on, till a shadow fell, and my child was gone. Now I kneel alone where she lies asleep. Joy of earth is flown, yet I know not to weep. For the shadows flee, and the bars are riven. Earth is naught to me, who have all in heaven. Who have all in heaven.
You've been listening to David Owen Norris and RNCM vocal student Rhiannon Dugan performing Arthur Sullivan's song My Child and I with text by Frederick Weatherly, a lyricist best known for his words to Danny Boy. I'm very grateful that we're able to bring you this little preview of the larger Sullivan Songs project.
Hello, my name is Adam Gorb. I am Head of School of Composition here at the Royal Northern College of Music. Back in 2007, the writer and professor of poetry at Manchester Metropolitan University, Michael Simmons Roberts, and I had a conversation about a collaboration with our composers and his students on the creative writing course. He came up with the name the Rosamond Prize after the road Rosamond Street West, which runs between RNCM and MMU. I have always been passionate about collaboration between composers and creative artists in other spheres. It is often hard for composers to find collaborators if they have an interest in working with words, and they have ambitions to write songs or operatic and music theatre plans. So Michael and I decided to offer composers and writers the opportunity to come together. Every January, RNCM composers and creative writing students from MMU meet here at the RNCM. This culminates in a concert later in the spring, where the pieces are performed and a panel awards the Rosamond Prize for the most promising collaboration. Perhaps the prize is less important than the burgeoning creative relationships that develop between the composers and the writers. Many have gone on to work together on further projects, including operas, music theatre works and song cycles, performed in Manchester and other parts of the country. I hope that this collaboration between the two institutions will continue to give birth to many more inspiring works.
Hello, my name is Edgar Diver. I'm a composer and performer, and I studied at the RNCM from 2016 to 2018.
My name is Aaron Lembo, and I collaborated with the composer Edgar Diver for the first time back in 2017, and together we won the Rosamond Prize. Our piece was titled Portrait of a Premium Supermarket Manager, and I wrote the poem inspired by my time working at a Waitrose branch while studying for my undergraduate degree in Bath.
It was a really, really enjoyable piece to write, not only because it was the first time I'd really written for voice, but also because it gave me a real chance to work with someone else when composing is often a solitary thing. So to be able to have someone else's creative input into the piece was something that I really, really enjoyed.
He stands on his own in his grey manager's suit. Waiting for the day's trading to begin. Waiting.
Working with Aaron was certainly an interesting experience. We met basically at like a speed dating session at the RNCM where all the composers were asked to play a little bit of their music, and all of the poets that we were working with read a little bit of their poetry. Aaron and I were immediately drawn to each other and spent some time then talking about the pieces afterwards, about what he'd written, what I'd done, and went to the pub and had a couple of beers, and that was really the where it started in terms of bringing the piece to fruition that way.
When acting as diplomat, his hands dance a practiced routine. Problem customers are his forte.
It was a great experience working with Edgar, and not long after we won the award, we collaborated again on a mini-opera called Mea Culpa that was performed at the International Anthony Burgess Foundation in Manchester. I'm sure we'll work together again in the future, as I feel that we have a genuine chemistry and respect for one another's work. I'm a big advocate of collaboration across artistic genres, and I only have positive memories from the Rosamond Prize.
Hello, I'm Carmel Smickersgill, and I did my undergraduate composition degree at RNCM. When I was in second year, I worked with a poet called Tony Ann Lacrette on a piece called Struggle. The piece was a reaction to the assumptions made about what an artist should create and what their work should be like the kind of aesthetic it should conform to, or the way that it's presented based on internal biases in the audience. So that could be stuff like race, gender, disability, an intersection of all of those things as well. It's a bit of an angry, don't assume you know what I will make. I tried to get that across in the music by keeping the flow and the pacing of it fluctuating between this really regular bare texture and this like jolted, unhinged, really chunky and disorientated beat.
Of course I'll read it. But don't tell me my voice suits it. Don't tell me how much to do it. Oh,
some of the horn writing should seem almost like in conflict with the voice. It's people rowing rather than having a conversation or rather than having a pleasant dialogue. I personally love collaborating and working collaboratively, especially with artists from different disciplines, because I think they offer a perspective in terms of not just your subject matter and the context of the piece of work that you're making, but also in the way that they, like, how their craft works. I think that you can take a lot from poetry or from dance or from theatre making or from kite making even, that you can apply to your own practice and then learn and grow as a composer. So I just think collaboration is another way of expanding your own head outside of the world that you're making things in.
Hi, I'm Lauren Garland and I was a student on the Creative Writing Masters programme at MMU between 2017 and 2019, and in 2019 I worked with composer Aaron Breeze for the Rosamond Prize. The piece Aaron and I collaborated on was called Bed Scenes with Mammoth. It's a tragicomic piece in the voice of a lonely woolly mammoth who spends every day searching for a companion. The reader, or the audience, knows that the protagonist is in fact a stuffed animal, but the mammoth believes himself to be very much alive and real. It's quite different to the type of poetry I normally write, in that it's a playful piece and I wanted to make the audience laugh, but I also hoped that we could break their hearts a little bit with the character's optimism in the face of his inevitable failure.
Hello, my name is Aaron Breeze. I'm a composer, accompanist, arranger and performer based in Manchester. At the time of writing Bed Scenes with Mammoth, I was severely obsessed with writing schmaltzy and abstract pieces about walruses, and I was immediately drawn to Lauren Garland's incredibly adorable poem about a toy stuffed mammoth.
Working with Aaron was such an energising experience and it felt like a genuine collaboration. As someone who's got very little musical background, Aaron's insight into what would work well was really vital. And it sounds obvious, but Aaron pointed out that the poem was too long to start with for the Rosamond anyway, and that we need space around the words for the music. We talked about the protagonist and how I imagined their character, and Aaron seemed to have a real vision for the piece from the start. I was amazed to see how true to my imagination the finished piece was. For me, collaborating with musicians, and in fact artists from other fields too, can be really challenging. You have to trust the person you're working with and be willing to relinquish control at times. But the rewards of tapping into someone else's ideas and expertise and their creative energy too can be huge, and I find that it forces me to stretch my practice into different directions compared to when I'm writing alone.
One of the perks with collaboration in general is that it's a great way to bounce ideas off of people. Personally, I find that I don't really know what I think or feel about an idea until I've shared it with someone else. And I think if you're working with people you trust and share a vision with, then the things that come out of it can be truly remarkable.
Hello, I'm Grace Evangeline Mason, and I'm a composer and graduate of the Royal Northern College of Music. Back in 2016, I participated in the Rosamond Prize concert, in which I collaborated with the poet Elizabeth Sennett Clough on the piece Samson, for soprano, viola and electronics. In the piece, the voice takes on the role of a biblical Delilah figure by acting as an alluring character at the outset, with a growing intensity that leads to some more hostile moments later in the piece as the motives of her actions become more apparent. The viola and electronics seek to create an underlying sound world with the beautiful simplicity of the character at the beginning, which becomes tenser in accordance with the voice. I think the capabilities of a collaborative relationship between composers and poets is a special and important one, as both music and the written word are inherently communicative art forms that are powerful conveyors of ideas, thoughts and emotions independently, but take on a whole other level of meaning when together. As my music is often inspired by extra musical sources such as poetry, it was truly wonderful to work with words written by a living poet. The Rosamond Prize, which we were also fortunate enough to win with the piece Samson in 2016, performed by soprano Stella Tartanen and violist Olivia Chung, remains a really wonderful memory for me.
At night, his hair wove itself around my neck, choked me like a hangman's net. It was this dream that brought me back to the Philistines' words.
My name is Anna Appleby. I'm studying for a PhD in composition at RNCM. My supervisors are Professor Emily Howard and Professor Michael Simmons-Roberts. This piece, For Sunflowers, was created in collaboration with poet Mary Williams for the Rosamond Prize, which we ended up winning in 2015. This piece came about because Mary had written a poem called For Sunflowers, which I read and was just really inspired by. Mary came to RNCM and we worked together in some of the practice rooms. I played her excerpts and she helped me think about the meaning of the poem and what I could bring out and which words would be the most important.
I'm Mary Joy Williams. I suppose the poem Sunflowers is much more of what you might call an existential or meditative poem than some of my early work. It was written after a consistent period of meditation practice done over many months, and this resulted in this moment of creative clarity and energy. Working with Anna was wonderful. First of all, I was born in Manchester, so it was just an amazing experience to walk into the hallowed RNCM and actually sit at a grand piano with a talented musician and have some sort of dialogue. I think initially I was possibly in awe, but I needn't have worried because actually Anna had already brought in this piece of music that she wanted to do something with, and she played it at this grand piano, and I just loved it. When we sat down at the piano, the dialogue flowed well, and I'm from a gospel background, so and I can't sight read music, so I was able to use my voice and to communicate with Anna.
It ended up being in a recitative style, which I think really suits the kind of poem that it is. I enjoyed working with Mary so much that it formed the foundation for me working with poets a lot more, and now I'm working with poet Niall Campbell on creating an opera for the BBC Philharmonic and RNCM singers. So it's had a huge impact on me, as you can tell.
The finished piece, I think, is a testimony to how well our approaches really matched. Overall, I was just so happy with the music and the piece. I have been known to turn off the lights and listening to it on my headphones.
And poetry
You've just been listening to Anna Appleby and Mary Williams discuss their piece For Sunflowers. Before that, you heard Edgar Diver and Erin Lembo's Portrait of a Premium Supermarket Manager, performed by David Kane, James Heathcote and Matthew Lamb. Aaron Breeze and Lauren Garland's Bed Scenes with a Mammoth, performed by Aaron himself with Ralph Williams. Carmel Spicklesgill and Tony Ann Lacrette's Struggle, performed by Gus Urquhart, Pip Sawyers, Tom Barber, George Burridge, Will Graham and Jax Greenslade. And Grace Evangeline Mason and Elizabeth Saniklos Sampson, performed by Stena Tatian and Olivia Chung. We're about to hear from two key RNCM colleagues about the college's collaboration with the vocal ensemble Edvard Grieg Corps. Before we do, I wanted to share the sound quality and vocal dexterity of this ensemble with two extracts from one of their recent recordings. The ensemble's from Bergen, and given their name, where better to start than with the music of Grieg. This is the opening of the Holberg Suite, originally written for piano, orchestrated by Grieg himself for strings, and then orchestrated by Jonathan Rathbone in 2014, especially for the ensemble. You can hear why this is such an exciting ensemble for singers at the RNCM to work with, and I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know the Shandas recording released last year. Edvard Grieg Corps sings Grieg. Let's hear an extract from the finale, conducted by Paul Robinson.
Hello, I'm Stuart Overington and I am the Director of Choirs at the RNCM. The relationship between the RNCM and Edvard Grieg Corps has been developing for a number of years, with small groups of singers going over to Norway to join in operatic productions in Bergen. In 2018, we had the opportunity to develop this further when the Edvard Grieg Corps came to the RNCM to work with the chamber choir and perform a joint concert together. This was then followed by a trip to Bergen with the whole chamber choir to perform together with the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra. The ensembles continue to be closely linked, with plans to have EGK back at the RNCM to work with our students again early next year. This kind of relationship has been invaluable for our students. Being so closely linked with a professional consort has not only given our students the opportunity to see how the profession works, but also be able to chat directly to professionals about what their lives look like, the kind of ways that they got into their jobs. On top of this, it's allowed us to look at creatively what we do as a chamber choir and ways that we can work alongside EGK in a different way. This led to us having discussions about future performance opportunities, but also looking at commissioning new works to be written specifically for the two ensembles.
Hello, I'm Rachel Spears and I'm the RNCM Chorus Manager. I've been working with the RNCM Chamber Choir now for 2 years, and I was with them when they had their collaboration project with the Edvard Grieg Corps. When the Edvard Grieg Corps came over to work with our members and with Stuart, we had some fantastic feedback afterwards from our choir members. So I thought I'd just share a little bit of that with you. Many of our members said that what they enjoyed most about the project was the opportunity to work with a professional vocal ensemble whilst feeling like a group of equals. The manner in which the Edvard Grieg Corps spoke and communicated with our choir members really was quite special, and you could see the enjoyment from both sides, which was a really lovely thing to witness. Some of our members also said that they enjoyed being sat near the EGK members and hearing them sing and taking in any advice given during the rehearsals. Some of the RNCM chamber choir also commented that they felt that their confidence had reached new levels whilst working with the Edvard Grieg Corps. One of our choir members also said that 3-hour-long rehearsals felt incredibly short. I'm not sure if everybody felt that way, but it was a fantastic week, and we were so grateful to the EGK for helping our members to feel more confident and more inspired and to bring such joy to our rehearsals.
The Hymn to St Cecilia by Benjamin Britten was one of the works that we worked on together when EGK first visited the RNCM. It's a fantastic piece written by Britten for St Cecilia's Day. The piece is written in 3 main sections linked together by a refrain. The first section features the choir working in 2 main parts, the upper voices singing over the bass line provided by the tenors and the basses. This then moves into a second, faster fugal section, which is followed by the more serene, beautiful ending featuring soloists from the chamber choir.
That was Benjamin Britten's Hymn to St Cecilia, setting text by W.H. Auden, performed by the RNCM Chamber Choir with members of the Edward Grieg Corps, conducted by Stuart Overington.
I'm Celia Denoy and I'm a piano student in my final year at the college. I did a project this year based around language and music. So I did a lot of research around the links between the two domains and particularly meaning, emotional and conceptual in language and music. And I think typically we think of language as the most direct way to communicate concepts and music perhaps more suited as a way to communicate emotions. And this project was about reversing these roles and looking into the emotional meaning in language. So in practice what I did was writing music for 4 different poems in languages that I didn't understand. So by removing the conceptual meaning of these poems, I was focusing purely on sonic nuances in these different languages, such as intonation, tone, stress, rhythm, and the way these convey emotion in a similar way to how music does. It was originally going to be instrumental pieces for ensemble, and before I started writing I had some sessions with the musicians and recorded some improvisations around bits of the spoken poems, and I also transcribed the rhythm and pitch of the text with my keyboard. And then I started writing a piece for ensemble with the material I had, and this was when the lockdown happened. So the concert that I had planned to perform this in got cancelled, but I did have already a lot of recorded material, musical ideas, so I went forward with it and made some electronic pieces, which was really fun, and I had the spoken text and the musicians' improvs, so I just experimented with making some electronic music. I'm also very grateful for the people I collaborated with, for providing me with amazing material to work with, so the musicians, the poets, and also some graphic artists that did amazing artwork to go with the poems, illustrating the meaning and also the sound. And unfortunately you can't see these now, but all the videos with the pieces are on my YouTube channel, so do check them out if you're interested. I was going to introduce a piece a bit more specifically what the poem is about, but I set myself to write the music without understanding what it actually meant. I didn't really translate it until I was almost done writing the piece. And I think it's part of the point of the project is to just embrace the fact that we don't understand what it is about, and yet we can still enjoy listening to it and engage with it emotionally. So I won't say anything else, and I hope you enjoy.
Οι φίλοι μου φωνάζουνε πως είμαι θεροβάμων, πως ζω σε κόσμους ύψιστους, σε όχθες ποταμών. Όμως ξεχνούν πως έρχομαι από γενιές τσιγκάνων και πως γεννήθηκα να ζω σαν εφελοθαμών. Κάθε πρωί κοιτάζομαι σε απαλούς καθρέφτες και κάθε βράδυ κοίτομαι σε χνούδια των ροδιών. Λατρεύω τους αγέραστους, συχαίνομαι τους ψεύτες και ξημεροβραδιάζομαι σε κύκλους παιχνιδιών. Μα κάθε που στολίζεται στα ροζ ο ουρανός, όταν φεύγουν τα σύννεφα ή ξεπροβάλλουν τ' άστρα, φεροβζώ σε ύψιστους, φεροβζώ σε ύψιστους. Κοίταζω ρεύει και κάτομαι, για τον κοίταζω ρεύει και κάτομαι. Όταν φεύγουν τα σύννεφα ή ξεπροβάλλουν τ' άστρα, με κυνηγάει η αίσθηση πως είμαι μοναχός. Πηδώ μέσα στα σύννεφα και ντύνομαι μες στα άσπρα. Όμως ξεχνούν πως γεννήθηκα να ζω, κυνηγάει η αίσθηση πως είμαι μοναχός. Κάθε πρωί κοιτάζομαι σε απαλούς καθρέφτες και κάθε κοίτομαι σε χνούδια των ροδιών. Λατρεύω τους αγέραστους, συχαίνομαι τους ψεύτες και ξημεροβραδιάζομαι σε κύκλους παιχνιδιών. Το ζω και κάθε το ζω σε κόσμους ύψιστους και κάθε σε όχθες ποταμών και κάθε το ζω και κάθε το ζω όμως τσιγκάν και πως γεννήθηκα άστρα, με κυνηγάει η αίσθηση πως είμαι. Πειτάζω και κοίτω, πειτάζω βράδυ κοιτάζω. Κοιτάζω όμως ρεύει και κάτομαι, για τον κοιτάζω όμως ρεύει και κάτομαι. Πειτάζω και κοίτω, για τον ροδιό και κάτω. Αίσθηση πως είμαι μοναχός. βυθό μέσα στα σύννεφα και ντύνομαι μες στα άσπρα.
That was Celia Denor's Every Night, working with text by Manos Petrakis, performed by Apostolos Kitsos, Nat Martin, Darren Gallagher and Pablo Orts. It seems appropriate, now more than ever, to end our show, uncharacteristically dominated by British music, with a project that celebrates internationalism and finds joy and strives to better understand language that may not be immediately comprehensible to the artist. RNCM Radio will be back next week with a programme celebrating Prism, the RNCM Centre